Okay, hi. Hey, if you're new here, welcome to the Fitsin Project. And if you're not, you already know we don't play small around here. I'm Rachel, corporate project executive by day, yoga teacher and retreat host by passion, and a woman wildly committed to helping you stop outsourcing your power. This show is where structure meets soul, where we regulate the nervous system and scale the business, and where we stop pretending burnout is normal. Quick love to the humans and brands that brought this show, and I actually use all these in real life. One Oak Financial, because money conversations should feel empowering. Rage Create for bold, creative entrepreneurs. The Expansion Room with Jennifer Liss. Lotus and Luna. Lifeform Yoga Mat. My ride or die. And Breathwork with Tabitha DeBruin. She is a game changer. Links are in the show notes. Support the ones that support this work. And all right, let's get it. Let's talk about today.
Hello. Man, I hope you guys had a great weekend. I know mine was really fun. I took my dad and my soon-to-be husband suit shopping for our wedding. And it was so stinking cute. My dad is so adorable in total dad fashion. Him and my fiance were just all two of a kind. So I really enjoyed getting to hang out with both of them. I don't know that we've actually had a day by ourselves, and we took that, and it was really so special to me, and I was really, really happy we got to do that. So anyway, enough about me. Today's conversation, it's about something we all have access to, but not all of us know how to use it. I'm joined by Tom Mitchell. He is a performance coach, speaker, and author of the book, Embrace Your Inner Coach. And this is a book that dives into what it actually means to access your internal wisdom and lead yourself from a higher level. So we get to talk about my favorite thing, what it means to be in the business of yourself. And it's not about doing more, people. No, it's about listening and how to listen differently to yourself. And what I loved about Tom, he is the first NBA mindset coach that ever was. And he sits at that intersection of mindset, performance, and awareness. And this conversation, it wasn't about adding in more noise, but it was about learning how to trust what's already within you. This is the type of work I admire, the type of work that I just love to learn about. And as you've been part of this community, and if you haven't, please stay in, because this is the type of information I love to share in this community. It is elevating your energy, trusting your instincts, creating your own playbook. And this is Tom Mitchell's story. So without further ado.
So-
Well, Tom, welcome to the Fitsin Project officially. It's so exciting to have you.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here too.
Yeah. So I love starting out all of the podcasts with one question. And this kind of gets us rolling because, with the Fitsin Project, we're in the energy, mindset, and yoga. But really, it's about being in the business of yourself and how that lands for you. So I'm going to ask you, what does it mean to you to be in the business of yourself?
In the business of myself, would be to pay attention to many dimensions, how I feel, what I'm thinking, how I'm acting, the whole holistic whole body approach. I wasn't really aware of that until I was about 17 or 18. I just kind of was cruising through, not ever given that a thought, and then started becoming mindful of a deeper dimension of myself. But yeah, I think it's, mind, body, spirit, right? What you're putting in your head, what you're putting in your body, and how you're feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's funny you said 17 or 18. I think that's way sooner than most people after um, after I've lived a couple years past that. But yeah, that's pretty cool that came to you in what I would consider early on.
Yeah. And painfully early, oh, by the way, it wasn't I wouldn't wish that on anybody. The way it, I guess I kinda woke up to some parts of myself that I was unaware of. I'd rather it be a gentler, smoother, transition approach, but that's the way life had it for me.
Man, good, way to put that because I feel like most people I talk to so I get to have this conversation with a lot of people, which I feel like is a blessing by itself. But I do feel like no one has a smooth way into this at
Yeah,
all.
yeah,
It's like life is gonna life you
yeah,
into your, mindset and energy and being in the business of yourself, whether you like it or not, one way or another. Yeah, but you got to pay attention to that, so that was cool, right?
yeah, yep.
Yeah, and how'd that lead you?
Well, actually, when we talked a few weeks ago about yoga, it it actually led me into yoga. This was in the early '70s when yoga was not popular, and I started reading and exploring and meditating and going to workshops when I was on a full college basketball scholarship. I was a jock, right? I was a leading scorer on my team, and I was a weirdo because I was doing all these alternative things that my teammates were not only unfamiliar with, but kind of like rolled their eyes, right? And so it led me into the study of yoga, many, many dimensions of it back then. I actually lived for a very short time at a yoga ashram in Pennsylvania called Kripala Yoga Ashram in the mountains, like, I don't know, north of Philadelphia, about an hour north. So it led me other places, but that was one of the places it led me to.
Wow, that's super cool. I, have the privilege to get to be a mindset coach and yoga teacher for our local college at Center and for the softball team. And they have never done yoga before. I mean, they're softball players, and yoga is really along, I think, in a younger mindset, along the lines of what you would do in cheer, right? Because you're lengthening muscles or stretching and doing all of those type of limber things with your body. And it's funny to me because I've been doing this for about, I don't know, 2 months now. And now they're like, "When's Coach Fitz gonna come back?" And, like, "When are we gonna get to do this again?" But it's
Yeah.
really cool how that, adapts to the body in, what I would think is like a way to feel good, and keep that
I
momentum going.
I have a real quick funny story I'll share with you.
Yeah.
It was around that time. I guess I was 18 years old, maybe freshman, and I got moved up to varsity. Back then, it was freshman and varsity team, so I got moved up to varsity, and we were in a bus ride in the mountains of Pennsylvania in a snowstorm, and our bus broke down. And so we have, I don't know, 25 basketball players, 12 from the varsity, 12 from the JV, and the coaches. So maybe 30 some people on the bus. And we're starting to freeze because we're not going to die, but we're getting cold. And I had um, gone to this, who knows, encounter group workshop, and we were learning to chant Om. And so I somehow convinced the entire bus to keep warm, that we would chant Om until the, AAA came or whatever. And it's a funny memory, a weird memory, but it actually happened. And I got all these masculine alpha guys to start chanting Om on our bus so we didn't freeze.
That is
Just
great.
I just thought of that story. Gosh, that was, over 50 years ago,
That is
50,
awesome.
52 years ago. Yeah.
They'll never forget that either, I'm sure. That is great. So, that also led you into your next phase of, being your own mindset coach, right? Did you go from college to you did, psychology, sports psychology, right?
Yeah, I coached, I was a head basketball coach, a college coach for 12 years, and I leapfrogged from that into the, NBA. with the Golden State Warriors, I was the team sports psychologist. So, and I did that for another 14 years. So I've been around a lot of basketball and around a lot of the inner game of basketball and sports because I worked with a lot of different athletes. But at the college level, it was so cool. I had every sport team in, like you're working with the softball team. So I would have the softball, baseball, soccer, wrestling, swimmers, dancers, boxers, you name it, skaters, all in my sports psychology classes. And we would explore a lot of the stuff that I write about, just self talk, visualization, having, the power of words, teamwork, empathy, those kinds of things. It was cool. Very cool. I
Yeah,
did that for over 30 years as a full-time and then part-time teacher. But yeah,
that is
I
so
love
neat.
that. I actually miss that. I don't miss a lot or regret a lot, but that's one thing I miss is that impact with young student athletes, and just being able to, inspire them to tap into a different dimension of themselves.
Yeah, I love that. And it is totally a different dimension. I mean, you've got your face blank, like point blank realities, and then you get to really kind of explore what the body is saying instead of your mind, right? That's what I love about it myself. When you were doing that, what was your like starting point with them? Someone brand new coming in, how did you introduce this to them?
Gosh, let me go back and remember. Um, Probably just a little bit of because remember this is not yoga class, this is sports psychology, right? This is the exploration of mind and emotions as it relates to performance in sports, right? So I would probably give them a little bit of a history background, how it originated, you know, with the Russians back in the 50s and so forth. Give them a little history lesson, and then I always wanted to make it super personal, and so I would have them immediately, um, ask themselves, what are they striving for the most? What's their greatest desire right now? What are they wanting to achieve? So it kind of look like what their goal is, their athletic goal. They might want a scholarship, or they may want to go play professionally, or who knows what, many, many things. And then next class or 2, we would start looking at roadblocks or blockages that may ways that you're thinking that may keep you from achieving that goal, and, like, how we can become aware of those. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. I did not start there, but now I'm gonna have to backtrack. But I don't have a degree in this, so I'm just
Yeah.
I think that's really neat. I was basically asking for myself. But so when you, did this, you got inspired, you started writing books, and now you're a well-known author. Do you wanna talk about those? I know you have several.
Well, so I have had a master's degree, and I started working for the Golden State Warriors, and I'll be 72 in a couple of months, but I was 40 when I started doing it, and my hair was white then. So I looked like an older dude with white hair, and I was going with my friend who was a Hall of Fame basketball player, Chris Mullin of the Warriors, played on the dream team with Michael Jordan, and I was his sports psychologist for a season, and I would travel with him to the games, and people would see me and say, "Hey, doc. Hey, doc." And I didn't have a doctorate. I had a master's degree, so I said, "Oh, shoot. I don't wanna be like a fraud," and so I went and got my doctorate while I was
40?
still teaching. Yeah, in sports psychology, in psychology, emphasis sports, and I then it started, one of my dissertation, I got to write a book for my kids who were ice skaters. They were young at the time. They ended up both being professional ice skaters with Disney on Ice. One of them for 10 years, traveled the world, I think like 48 countries, 6 continents as a professional ice skater. But when they were 6 or so, I wrote a book called Finding Greatness Within Ice Skating. I don't even know how to skate, but it was all the mental principles, the psychological principles around performance written for kids, written for elementary school kids. And so that was my first experience of really writing, like a publishing. I've written a bunch, but I'd never published. And I got my doctorate. And then from that, I started, I wrote an Amazon bestseller with Joe Montana, NFL quarterback legend. And another one with Chris, the NBA star, and then I just published one recently called Embrace Your Inner Coach. It's one I'm maybe the most proud of because there's no superstar attached to it. It's just me, myself alone, you know? I tell stories about them, but it's I wrote it myself without the collaboration. It's I when you said he's a published or successful writer, I don't really think of myself as a writer, even though I've written like 15 books. Because I don't think I'm that other writers, I read people who are great writers, right? I just write
Mhm.
like see spot run stuff, right? Basic principles that with a story that might be interesting. So yeah, I don't have a real attachment. When you say I'm a coach, yeah, I'm a coach. I am that. I feel the power and the influence of my coaching. My writing has always been kind of like an extension of my coaching.
Yeah. And it's like you see spot run is keep it simple, right? Not to overthink.
Yeah,
Yeah.
especially if you don't spell that well, like me, and you don't wanna have a lot of big words that I wouldn't understand, so why would I write them for other people, you know?
Yeah. So there's two different things. I want to ask you this. Your zone of excellence versus your zone of genius. What is that to you?
Well, okay, and I'm not this is a good question, but I'm gonna probably come at it a little counterintuitive or a little I am not a genius. I've been around geniuses. It's like I've in the NBA, I was around 7'2", 6'11", 6'9" guys. You're in the elevator with 6 guys that are all above 6'8", and I'm 6'1". I'm not confused. I'm not as tall as them. I am not trying to like, I'm really tall. Well, I'm average height, maybe a little bit above average, but these are giants, right? And I know contrast worked. I've coached geniuses, and I'm not one. So when people like, "What's your genius?" I know it's kinda semantics, but I kinda get literal in there. I have a friend who's a Mensa genius, one of my good friends, and when I'm around him, it's obvious when he gets that part of his brain going, I'm at a different level. I coached the drummer of the Grateful Dead, Mickey Hart, for 3 years. We walked like 300 miles. The story's in my new book. He's a genius. Like, whoa, so when you're around that, you kind of get a little bit protective of even using that word. But if you want to like ask me it again, sort of what's my greatest strength, maybe I could answer it that way. Sorry, I don't want to challenge you, but I just have I'm a little triggered by that word because it's thrown around so much, and I'm not that.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally understand that. For me, it's more of a personal lineage. I've got a zone of excellence. I am excellent at being a project manager. I can do it inside and out. I'm excellent at it, but that's not my drive of passion. My drive of passion, where my zone of genius is a
Yeah.
yoga teacher. I can teach
Ah,
a yoga class and it will land in your soul as you on your mat, and that I know that's how I know it's my zone of genius.
that's
I'm not a
beautiful.
genius at
Yeah.
yoga, though. I'm a
Yeah. Yeah.
genius in me teaching and
Oh,
letting it flow
beautiful. Yeah.
through.
Yeah. Yeah. And then if with that example, excuse me, just getting over a little cold, so
No, you're fine.
I don't know if it's genius, but my zone of passion, I've had the good fortune several times in my life of going really deep within my soul, my being, my essence, where, whoa, it sort of transcended imaginary limits of who I am, what's possible, traveling, through time and space, like
Yeah.
kind of alternative realities, sort of, so to speak, right? Deep meditation, not very often. A couple times I can really point to those, right? That's I aspire. I don't know if I'm not a genius in those spaces, but I aspire towards those spaces. If I had a magic wand, you could have millions and millions of dollars, you could live in that space. There's no question my answer. Live in that space, right? There's
Mhm.
because that space is beyond wealth, right? Whatever that is, I call it the invisible treasure in my book. That place that we tap that's not logical, it's not necessarily rational. Maybe it connects into our imagination or something, but that's a really cool space. And the only reason I aspire towards it is because I visited it. I have I've walked in those pathways for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, or it's not even minutes. It's not a time thing, but just ooh, wow, life is bigger, broader. Walt Whitman said something. I am a famous poet in 1800s from Philadelphia or Camden, New Jersey, someplace back east where I was originally from. I loved him, and he said, "I am bigger than I thought. I embrace the east, the south, the north, and the west. Basically, I am way more than I ever thought that I was, and that's what I aspire
Yeah.
to."
Man, that is beautiful. Full body chills. Full body chills. And I feel like that is such an energetic level. And it's very cool because everybody can reach that point. I truly believe everybody can reach that point because I feel like I know in my bones exactly what you're talking about. And me too. I've been there and don't do it all the time, but every once in a while I'll get to this place in a meditation. I'm like flying in my meditation. I'm going places, and I know it's energetic, but the things that I see and then matched to my experience in that moment, it's unmatched, you know, and it's to me, it's like my sacred space. It's
When that space you're talking about, when I was thinking, what am I gonna call this? When you're writing a book and you're coming up with chapter titles, you play around with different ideas and stuff, and I originally was gonna call it My Billionaire Place, but then I thought so much, kinda stigma with, billionaires who aren't really respected anymore, and they're taking advantage of people. So I kinda threw that one out, like, not the bi so I call it the invisible treasure. But it's a very, 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 very wealthy, almost priceless space that, it's joy on steroids.
yeah. Yeah, a
Yeah.
total release. I wonder I'd love to know, like, if I could be hooked up to a machine and get into that era and that space, like, what would the charts read? Like, what hormone is being released the most during that?
It's interesting. This was 30 years ago, maybe. My best friend was the president of Pac Bell and AT then at AT&T. He was college roommate, ended up being godfather of my kids, and I coached him for 20 years, and he was like a sort of a new age corporate guy. We used to go to Germany to meditation retreats. He went to the New Age School of Business, plus and he is a corporate guy that has 25,000 people reporting to him. So he was one weirdo meets another weirdo, and we became best buddies, right? But he found this brain wave, the guy at Stanford University or right near Stanford University, and he put like he did this research of monks that had meditated it for their whole life, Tibetan monks or whatever, and they had meditated and did like a brain scan of them, and then he was somehow, and I don't know the science of it, but he was attaching these helmets to your head to see if they could kind of program that same type of brainwave chemistry into normal people like us. And so I just remember doing it. I can't remember much about it, but I was always doing kind of alternative things with him like that.
That is cool.
Yeah,
That is really
I
cool.
have, by the way, oh, you can't see her, my sweetheart, 9-year-old Great Pyrenees just came in to say
Oh,
hi. She
hi.
was, she was she's laying on the floor there. Yeah.
That must be a compliment to your energy, which I was gonna even say, like, "Your energy is amazing, I love this conversation so much." So, I always feel like when the dogs come up around me, like, when I'm by myself, I must be emitting some good energy, or they're just like, "Yes."
Do you wanna see
But
her? You wanna see her
yeah,
real
I
quick?
do actually.
Okay, okay. Let me see, I have to move my camera and see, there she is, Sunny Bunny. There she
Oh,
is. Yeah.
Sunny Bunny, that's
Yeah.
super sweet. That's so sweet. Oh, so when you're talking about, your friend and now, he's corporate, but
He
you're
he's
in this
long retired.
okay.
He retired, with
Are
that.
you still in this space, like, of corporate mindset coaching and things such
Yeah,
as that?
I'm still working it. That's my job. That's sort of how I make my living these days is with companies, not with athletes. Um, writing books is a nice thing to do and, get you on some podcasts and maybe a speaking gig or something, but predominantly I coach, business, not just leaders. People like to say business leaders, like, you're coaching the C-suite, which I do. I work with top level people at Google, at construction companies. I also coach first and second year salespeople that are selling prosthetics or um, medical devices or real estate. So I'm not attached to the level or the status of the person I'm working with. I am sort of attached to their burn, their desire for growth, for hunger, for you know, want to explore themselves.
Do you have, like, a set process you use, or is that
Mm,
outlined in your book? Or
yeah, kind of. I would like to say I do more than I do. My style is, I guess, if I had a process, it's kind of like what you're doing. You ask questions to explore where the river flows and then have a bunch of tools to be able to tap into, um, from what I hear. But I think asking questions, the Socratic leadership approach, right? Ask questions, get to really know somebody, what they're wanting, where they're stuck, what they fear, what they love, and then going from there, because I've tried the cookie cutter kind of here's my system, my approach, and occasionally it works, but it gets a little boring to be honest. Like I like to flow and dance with the moment, right? And so each person then becomes a unique experience, experiment in a way,
yeah. Yeah, I love that. I love how you just divided the 2 as well, because I do see a lot in mentorship programs and things like that where there's, like, these step-by-step processes, follow XYZ and you're gonna make so much money, and I'm like, I just don't feel like that would work for me in my mind and how I relay it out to others, because everybody's end goal is unique to them, as
Yeah.
we're just unique individuals.
Yeah. And some people do really need that approach, and I've had not very often, but I've had times where a relationship didn't necessarily work out on a coaching thing because they needed a more buttoned up, systematic, step-by-step approach, and there's definitely a place and time for that. I'm not even mocking it in any sense, but you also gotta know who you are and what works for you because I think you can't really coach others in ways that don't work for you, right? And so I love being asked questions. So I love asking questions,
Mhm.
I love being heard and listened to deeply. So I love now I've learned to love to listen deeply and hear others,
Yeah. So what's your biggest impact with your corporate coaching now?
biggest impact. See, I have a business partner who works a lot with the ROIs, the day-to-day, I call it looks under the hood, can tell you what's wrong with the carburetor or the engine, if it needs an oil change or something, and which gives me the freedom to spend more time not necessarily as direct and mainline as you and I are talking, but to get into some of those thoughts and questions around personal growth and development, even though they're working for a company and they have a job and they have a team and they have a budget and you know, they have things that requirements they have to meet. It's all there. I can also talk to them about, how they feel about that. What are they, learning about themselves in that. So I get to work more on the inner game, not completely, but
Mhm.
partially. And my business partner can get work more on the outer game of the people. So it's really good to have a teammate in that way.
That's really cool. Yeah, I can see that, and I'm, like, putting that together in my own life right now, um, as how to, kinda use that's the wrong term, not use, but flow with my organization, but bring my full self into it instead
Mhm.
of compartmentalize,
Yeah.
"This is me and fits in, this is how I operate," versus, "This is me in my corporate job, and this is how I'm gonna operate." I'm actually bringing them both together right now, and it is beyond fruitful when I can bring my full self into my corporate world and then learn my corporate world's learnings and bringing it over into Fitson. It's kinda like yoga on and off the mat type
Yeah,
thing.
that good for you for doing that, and I tell you the potential challenge of that, you have to be a little thick-skinned because not everybody will resonate with more of the yoga dimension, the more of the internal soft skills. A lot of people will, especially as things have changed and more openness. But remember, I came back in the 80s when this was thought of as odd or weird or what? Like,
Mhm.
and like I was one of the first sports psychologists in the NBA. Like teams didn't even what's that? And now every team has multiple ones, or a company. So you're lucky in a sense you may not get the same resistance. But one of the things that I learned, and I did this in my new book, I told a few stories that I would never normally tell to people that I know weren't of the same kind of tribe of consciousness, right? Like
Yeah.
if that I would just hold that story off because I don't want to be rejected or thought of as too strange or whatever. But I said, you know what, heck with it. I went ahead and told those stories. One is about a Hindu saint that I hung out with, and that her name's Amachi Ama. She's won the religious uh, leader of the year award with the Pope and the Dalai Lama, and like she has all these orphanages across the world, and I got hugged by her, and the news camera came and was filming us. There were thousands of people there. And it just happened to be when I was getting hugged, and I was freaked out that the all the players and the owner of the Warriors and stuff was going to see me like, "Oh my god, like, this is weird," right? And so I kinda kept that as a compartmentalized thing, and now in my new book, I tell the story,
Yeah.
So I'm just willing to be a bit vulnerable with the truth of who I really am.
Yeah. And I feel like this where we are now, authenticity is what people really want. And in my mind, if you come with your full self and your full authentic self, then there's no question about who you are, where you stand, and what's going on. And there's nothing that anybody can make up. It's black or white, you are or you're not, right?
Right, that's a great point. Yep,
So
yeah.
when I am coming in in that angle, I fully also have to embrace, well, I gotta let them now make the decision that they are either gonna accept me or reject me. And that's hard, because it's like, "Oh, well,
So
yeah."
let me do a little thing with since you're asking about let me ask you this question,
Yeah.
right? Okay, so when you make a choice to whatever that is, in a yoga class, you talk about something that's a little bit more philosophical or deeper, or you talk about breathing or something,
Mhm.
and it could be rejected or it could be really accepted and loved. What is the fear that arises in you of potentially holding back from doing that or has been the fear?
I got 10 in my mind right now. Okay, so my most recent experience, I'm teaching a new way because I'm just trying to figure out what hits and what lands. So I'm bringing new stuff to the classes every time I get a chance. So if I learn something new, I bring it. I learned how to do a Kundalini yoga, which is bringing up energy from your root chakra and trying to move it up and out through the crown, right? And
Yeah,
it's all
yeah,
chakra based.
yeah,
And with that, I'm also acknowledging spiritual terms and using godlike vocabulary. So I would say, You're a masterpiece, a piece of the master. You are someone, some of them one." And those were the terms that I used. And I knew it was risky going in, but I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do it because I'm just going to see what lands. And I had two people in that class get up and leave. And I've never had anybody just up and leave in the middle of class. One of them never came back, and one of them came back, and I'm like, "That's really weird." But it's a psychological warfare for me because I'm like, "Oh, man, I did it wrong," or I ruined someone else's experience, or, oh man, I should have never gone outside of my comfort zone. And then the other half of me is like, you know what? This is yoga. It's not that serious. It's 1 hour of your week. And if this is that serious to you, this must be saying more about you than it does me. I'm playing. We are only playing. And this is just a human experience. And then I have to just let it go. And those are the fears, and that's how I combat it. And that's now what I believe. Like, I'm like, well, don't come back then. Okay.
Yeah. And, in being yourself and just letting it rip, there's always a chance words trigger somebody from some that
Yeah.
word triggers has I mean, it has to do with you because you said the words, but it has nothing to do with you. They, um interesting you said Kundalini yoga. So, the ashram I told you when I was, uh I don't know how old I was, 20 or 21, 22, that I went to live at briefly. I didn't like it. That's why I didn't stay. It was a Kundalini yoga ashram.
Oh, yeah.
The guy was a Kundalini master, use that word, right? And, it was, you talk about odd. These people, there's a term. Did you hear the term Shaktipat?
I have not.
So a
No.
Shakti pot or something, I might have the spelling or the verbiage wrong, but it's like this from the root chakra. It goes up your spine into all the chakras, and people would be, like, shaking and doing all these weird things for, like 10 seconds, 30 seconds, screaming, and it was, like, just I in a silent meditation, somebody would just I don't wanna do it on the thing, but, like, a real loud, "Ah," like, I thought, this isn't for" and I was like that person.
Yeah.
It wasn't, like, bad, it wasn't, offending me as far as that it's illegal or it's immoral. It just wasn't for me. So I was that woman who ended up leaving because I didn't like it, right?
Yeah.
So maybe that helps you out. It's to yeah, it's easy to say not take it personal, but not take it personal.
Right.
I've had students in my class many times get up and leave because I made them uncomfortable with an exercise, and I didn't intend to.
Mhm.
You know?
Yeah.
Do we have any ti I could take a minute and tell you a really funny, not so funny story. Do we have another minute?
Well, I've got all the time.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm on your
So
schedule.
so I'm in my class, and, I had to go to Scotland to give a speech with all these other writers, and I could talk about anything I wanted. And I was going to talk as a writer, the power of words, but not words on paper, but words that we speak, right? So I've been contemplating words, words, words. So I do this exercise with my class, and I get my whole class sitting down, and I said, "Hey, I have something really intense I want to share with you today." And I'm now acting. I'm being I'm over dramatizing this. And I say, "I want to ask you a question. Nobody has to answer, but I want you to think about it because it's a really, really weird personal question." And they're all in anticipation. And I whisper, "Has anyone ever killed somebody?" I had 30 some students in my class. Well, this one football player, really, really religious Christian kid, starts packing his bags. Like, I'm not going to hang with this conversation. And somebody says, "Why are you asking? Have you?" And I bow my head, and I'm playing this to the max. I had thought about it in advance. I'm a bit of an actor, right? So I said, "I have 3 times." You could hear a pin. You could hear an ant crawl. And I said, "I've killed 3 people with my words. I've ruined relationships because of mean, ugly, unintentional things that I've said from bullets that came out of my mouth, even if they were truthful, the way they came out and landed in that person's heart or their mind destroyed those. I don't have those friendships anymore. They're gone. They're dead. I killed them by the power of my words." I said, "I could also tell you many, many times I've healed and uplifted and inspired people through the power of my words. But right now, I want to talk about the negative aspect of when you aren't conscious of your words. The kid sat back down. I apologized. I said, man, I wasn't trying to freak you out. I just was really using a theater experience to let people see how powerful words, even me asking the question was power, my words, right? So anyway, um, but as far as people, you can imagine if I have the ability to do that in a class, and I taught on and off, full-time, part-time for 35 years. So you met thousands and thousands of students I've had in my classes that I'm sure I've, you know, ticked some people off with things I've asked, things I've said. Yeah. So I'm not telling you it's comfortable, but if you're going to be out there, you just got to get used to it. I've been booed by about 200 people in a speech, booed, just like some people stood up, boo, because I joked around about Joe Montana. He was we were in Dallas and they loved their Cowboys, and Joe Montana threw this famous play called The Catch against the Cowboys, and they won the game. And it's a sore spot, really sore spot for a lot of Cowboy fans. It's like their religion. I was mocking their religion, but I had zero intention to hurt anybody's feelings. I was the keynote speaker for Comp USA, and it doesn't even exist anymore. And I was making a joke, and I got booed. So it
Wow.
happens. It happens, Rachel.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That
Yeah,
is,
I never really recovered. I was like probably the worst speech I ever gave. I didn't make it wasn't a high-paying speaking gig, but whatever they paid me, I should have probably given it back to them because I I wasn't a good speech. Because once I got knocked off that horse, of being booed. I mean, I don't know if you've ever been booed, but it's weird.
yeah. Wow. That is wild.
But I've also had the other extreme, right? Where
Yeah.
standing ovations. So like, it goes with the territory if you're gonna put yourself out there. Even this audio, this podcast, somebody could be listening to this, say, "That guy, I like hated something I said or you said," right? Like, just
Mhm.
turn it off, click it off.
Yeah.
We're making ourselves, vulnerable.
Right. Oh, man. I feel like we could talk about this for hours, and I know we don't have hours, but I feel like this is such a hot topic. Man, I'd love to have you back on here just to speak about vulnerability and how to overcome that because you're not only vulnerable even when you're giving a speech or you're doing a podcast or you're teaching, but even the guys that are out there on the court and doing everything that they're supposed to be doing, they're booed too, and
Yeah,
they're cheered on, and it's like, how do you reset real
yeah,
quick
yeah,
after a failure or something like that?
yeah.
And that's just kind of like that mind game that you really have to hone in on, right?
Yeah, how do you use fear, rejection, um, to your advantage, right? So yeah, some other time,
Wow. Well, I so totally appreciate you, Tom. This was such a gift, and thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and just your energy is wonderful. Thank you. Have a good day. Oh, all right. So, something that really stayed with me from this conversation is this: your inner coach isn't missing, it's just often the quietest voice in the room. And most of us have been conditioned to look everywhere else before we ever look within. So, if you can take anything from today, let it be this: where in your life are you outsourcing your own knowing? And what would you shift if you trusted yourself, even just a little bit more this week? Because, like we all know, with all of the podcasts, all the episodes, all of the everything, being in the business of yourself is not about having it all figured out. It's about being willing to listen, respond, and lead yourself anyway. That's literally the work. That's the practice. So, if this episode resonated, share it with someone who needs this reminder. And if you're ready to go deeper into this work, join me. Join me inside the Fitson world,
whether it's through a class, a retreat, or staying connected in this space by joining the email list. You're not doing this alone, all right? So let's bring this in. Let's close this episode with an Om together after an inhale. Om. And remember, you are your most important project.